Tonight's show is brought to you by two people who are not from Southern Illinois, but their editor is. I, Sarah Voorhees-Wendell, have done my best to cut around the mispronunciations that us Southern Illinoisans know. That said, there were a couple that had to stay as is. If you know, you know. And don't judge the guys. If I wasn't from the area, I probably wouldn't know either. Also, go Salukis.
Astonishing Legends would like to thank Skylight Frame, Wondrium, Page One Books, Cerebral, Stamps.com, our contributors at Patreon.com, and you, our listeners, for making tonight's show possible.
In 1973, local news cycles were being dominated by the Vietnam War and the Watergate break-in from the prior year. The man who invented cellular technology made the first handheld cellular phone call in April of that year. Also in April of '73, actors Adrian Brody and Adam Scott were both born, and Pioneer 11 was launched on a journey to study our solar system. Its last transmission was 27 years ago, but in about 4 million years, it will carry its metal plaque with a message from humanity to the cosmos, close to the star Lambda Aquila. 1973 also saw a spate of nuclear tests at the Nevada test site, 19 that year alone. One of them actually took place on April 25th, a little over 1,800 miles away on that same day in a quiet little town in southeastern Illinois called Enfield. Something very unusual was unfolding. Enfield is what folks in Scott's home state might say is not really a town, but more of a wide spot in the road. Home, at the time, to maybe 600 or 700 people, it was a quiet place. But at 10 p.m. on April 25th, a 50-year-old disabled World War II veteran named Henry McDaniel heard a scratching sound at his front door. He took a gun and a flashlight to investigate, and on that windy night, between a couple of bushes in front of his house, he saw a strange creature that bore no resemblance to anything he'd ever encountered before in his life. A creature now referred to as the Enfield Monster. McDaniel said it had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms coming out of its breast area, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 to 5 feet tall and was grayish colored. It was trying to get into the house. He fired at it several times, hitting it at least once, at which point it let out a hissing sound, not unlike that of a cottonmouth viper, before it bounded away, covering 75 feet of distance with just 3 jumps. McDaniel was portrayed in the press as eccentric and unreliable, but the details of this legend have so much more to offer when you're not dismissive of it.
Welcome back to Astonishing Legends. I'm Scott Philbrook, and this is Forrest Burgess.
If they do find it, they will find more than one, and they won't be from this planet, I can tell you that. Henry Barney McDaniel, Eyewitness.
Join us tonight as we introduce you to the enigmatic Enfield Monster.
And we're back.
That we are, folks. Wait, what were you doing there? What was that voice?
I feel like we've been recording for 3 hours already, and we've not even got to the show content part of the recording.
Well, that's because we have to rehearse. We had to do our rehearsals.
I see. Okay, right. I'm already exhausted, but let's keep pressing on. Crack on, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's 3 hours later for me, man. I'm in it to win it tonight.
I know, but you're on fire, my friend.
Yeah,
I think you were wound up and ready to go.
Wound up and ready to go. Well, you know what? I feel like covering Chuck Fort has really helped me get recentered.
Yeah, you're right. You know, it's nice to know that we're standing on his shoulders, and he cleared the path for folks like us. And you know what? Really, nobody called him Chuck or Chick.
Oh, that's right. His nickname was Toddy, I think.
Well, as a child, yeah, because, you know, his dad was Charles Nelson, so it was two Chucks in the family, so he was Toddy, yeah.
It was great getting to know him better. Of course, we're joking around here, but he is legit a serious inspiration for me anyway.
Well, yes, for a lot of us listening, even if you may not know it. And guess what? We should all know more about our inspirations, right? Plus, tonight's topic is, you could say, classic
Fortean. It's classic Fortean. That's right. It's right up his alley. A strange cryptid with some scientific study behind it. But first, a couple of very quick notes here for housekeeping. Most important of which is that the main show is about to be dark for 2 weeks. When you're bi-weekly like we are, these breaks occur naturally as you lay out the calendar for the year. But that's okay because sometimes we need the breaks too.
Oh my goodness, don't we know it? Well, we will still be producing our Patreon exclusive show, The Astonishing Junk Drawer, and since there are 2 dark weeks of the main show, that means there will be 2 Junk Drawer shows in a row over at patreon.com/astonishinglegends. So yeah, if you want to hear us year-round, and who doesn't, frankly, just join our other Patreons over there for that.
Yeah. Nobody. There's most people in my family don't.
No, nobody I know.
Seems like
Nobody
they
I
don't
really
listen.
know.
They don't listen at all.
No.
Listen, we don't usually do shout outs just because that can unleash a torrent of requests that can be difficult to handle.
Sure.
But we did get an email in a few weeks ago that we wanted to share parts of because it matches our sentiment about some current world events.
Yeah, well, this email came in from Jules just a few weeks ago, and it was a shout-out request, but not for the person themselves or someone close to them, but something larger, and I'll share an excerpt from it here. Hi there, I love the podcast. The topics are indeed astonishing, and I appreciate the room you leave for skeptical analysis as opposed to total bias. It's far from the programs that make me laugh until it becomes too uncomfortable to continue on with hearing the nonsensical ignorance. I would like to request a big shout-out to all of Ukraine and friends. Although they probably won't hear it, I hope they know that the world is pulling for them, and they have proven to be the bravest of people in the face of such awful cruelty and hate. They should know they're in our thoughts, and they must keep their positivity as it seems to have made a significant impact. The West may need a reminder to never take for granted the fact that we live our lives in total freedom and that we should try harder to unite, especially here in the U.S. Thanks for all of the content that you clearly spend a ton of time on for all of our curious minds. Keep on keeping on, and we will keep listening. So, Jules, very well put, and thank you so much for sending that in. And yes, we have great admiration for the people of Ukraine in the face of the Russian invasion, and we sincerely hope that in the long run they will prevail. If you'd like to help Ukraine out, a charity that we like, reviewed by CharityWatch.org, is called CARE. Charity Watch gives them an A rating and approval in the 90% after reviewing their IRS Form 990, which provides transparency on where the funding is going so you know it will get to those in need.
Here's an excerpt on their mission. CARE USA plans to reach 4 million people with a focus on women and girls affected by the war in Ukraine, the most acute critical needs as identified by CARE's partner organization, People in Need, or PIN. First responder teams in Ukraine, as well as on border crossing points, are multi-sectoral, ranging from food, water, hygiene items, key non-food items such as mattresses, sleeping bags, and blankets, psychosocial support and protection, and sanitation facilities at the overcrowded border crossing areas. Priority response at the moment is to provide life-saving humanitarian assistance in Ukraine, in areas affected by military escalation where millions of people are at risk of loss of life, injury, and without access to basic services such as food, water, sanitation, and healthcare.
Go to care.org, that's care.org, and give now to help with this mission, and give confidently knowing that your donation will get to those in need in Ukraine.
Slava Ukraini. All right, it's time to get started with tonight's show. And as we dive in here, we wanted to give special thanks to our friends in the Astonishing Research Corps who really pitched in on tonight's topic of the Enfield Monster and other neighboring monsters, as you'll hear. This includes, but is not limited to, Alex, Jen, Lauren, and Mike. Thanks so much for helping us dig up some solid info on this story.
Yes, absolutely. Big thanks to the ARC as always. So without further ado, let's dive in here. What is the Enfield Monster? Shall we have an overview?
Yeah, I don't know. Do we?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was waiting for you to.
I didn't bring the
direct
overview.
question to you, not
Am
the
I doing the
listeners.
overview, or are you doing the overview?
I will do the overview. I'm just
Okay,
asking if you
let's
were
overview
ready
it.
for it. Okay.
Yes, I'm ready.
Well, all right. Well, this story is actually known by 2 titles, generally known as the case of the Enfield Monster or the Enfield Horror, because there was some horror involved. This is not the story of the Enfield poltergeist in England. And no, we will not have a segment where we talk about how horrible Ed and Lorraine Warren were. I had to make that clear because, people are going to ask. Yes, That's why didn't you bring that up? Why didn't you say that? This is not in England. This is in the Midwest, in the U.S. So get ready for that. Well, there's one great source that's close to our hearts, and we didn't even know it yet. In the ARC, our good friend Mike Kay, well, of course, he has a tremendous knowledge of all this kind of stuff, and folklore and
Yeah, he's written
really,
books on it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, he had Loren Coleman's book, Bigfoot, The True Story of Apes in America, from Peer Review Pocket Books, way back in 2003.
Yeah, that's a classic. I don't have that book. I wish I had it. It comes up all the time.
Speaking of Fort earlier, it's the kind of book that we wish we had as kids, and it is the kind of book that, like with Fort's stories, we all wish we had access to, because it's just one after the other. There's these great anecdotes. We certainly trust all of his research and his in-field investigations. So again, this Enfield story pops up in his book, and we will, of course, have a link to that. Well, we're going to draw from that book. What I liked about the pages that Mike found for us is that it's not just this one event. Of course, these things don't happen just by themselves usually. There's a spate of events surrounding it, and that's also part of the very curious, dare I say, flap that was happening around this time. And we're also going to draw, of course, from newspaper articles at the time, because this is going to be 1973, and we're going to pull from, I think, other magazine articles, blogs. But first, big thanks and much respect to Loren Coleman, who we've mentioned quite a bit on the show over the years. In addition to his fieldwork, specifically with cryptozoology, Forteana, folklore, and psychology, research and investigations, and writing numerous books on those subjects and others, Loren is one of the main people running the International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine, on Thompson's Point. So, Scott, you have a little bio for him, right?
Loren Coleman, president of the board for the museum there. Mr. Coleman, 73, is the founder and director of the museum, having collected for over 5 decades the cryptozoological components and contents of the physical museum. He is a world-renowned expert in the field, author of several foundation books in cryptozoology, and a frequent on-air interviewee and consultant. Mr. Coleman was a full-time researcher at the University of Southern Maine's Edmund S. Muskie School for Public Policy for 13 years, as well as an adjunct assistant and visiting associate professor for over 20 years at USM and 5 other New England universities. He lives in Portland, Maine, which is, by the way, where all the Philbrooks are from. All my people are up there. There's even a Philbrook, like a major road up there called Philbrook, I think. And besides sharing his collection on loan, he donates over 40 hours a week to running the museum.
And on top of that, he's just a really terrific fellow.
Yes, he is.
Upright guy, very open and accessible. We just asked him a question today.
Yeah, had an exchange on Twitter with him, not just maybe 2 hours ago. So,
but here's the thing. He was there at the time investigating, boots on the ground. So it is a definitely worthwhile perspective to hear what he has to say about this. But not just that sighting. A bunch of them around in the area. And this is just a small fraction of the book. So pick that book up. You're going to dig it. And we're going to get back to that now to frame the story here. So Loren said he received some national publicity for his investigation into the rash of creature sightings in White County in southeastern Illinois. And Loren says the sheriff there, Roy Poshard Jr., threatened to arrest the key witnesses. Things were, not because he was being mean, things were getting kind of wild and out of hand.
Yeah.
Loren had interviewed a couple of the eyewitnesses to the Enfield Monster. On the evening of April 25th, 1973, one of the first ones was 10-year-old Greg Garrett, and he was playing in his backyard when a horrific creature approached him and stepped on his sneakers, ripping them up. Greg ran inside, crying and scared out of his wits, and the newspapers will say, quote, he was hysterical. So in this pieced-together timeline, that's one of the first encounters, you could say, that's been documented. Well, about 30 minutes later, in the late evening of April 25th, 1973, Henry McDaniel hears something scratching on his door. He opens the door to find what he described as, quote, it had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms coming out of its breast area, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 to 5 feet tall and was grayish colored. It was trying to get into the house. We, of course, opened the show up with that quote, but he stood by that. Remember the description of 2 pink eyes, okay? So just write that on a Post-it. Put that right onto your sound player thing, your Walkman, however you're listening to these shows, okay?
They're bringing the Walkman back, you know.
Well, it worked then, it'll work now.
Actually, I want to read this article. This is one of the first ones that comes up when you start looking into this sighting. There's several in he wound up doing, Mr. McDaniel wound up doing a billion interviews, and a lot of things syndicated. But this one comes from the paper, the Mount Vernon Register News of Mount Vernon, Illinois. And it's written by AP writer, Associated Press writer Dennis Montgomery, dated Friday, April 23rd, 1973. And it's called A Monster at Enfield. And it has a quote above it. It says, 3 legs, pink eyes as big as flashlights. So here's the article. Enfield, Illinois. Henry McDaniel says he shot and wounded a monster on his doorstep and is worried it may come back to get even. McDaniel, 50, said he had just returned from a meeting Wednesday night when he heard something scratching on his door. It had 3 legs on it, he said. A short body, 2 little short arms, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 to 5 feet tall and was grayish colored. It was trying to get into the house, he said. McDaniel, an antique dealer, said he slammed the door and grabbed a pistol and a flashlight from the drawer in his bedroom and returned to the front door, opened it, and spotting the monster about 12 feet from the house, he fired 4 shots. When I fired that first shot, I know I hit it, he said. The creature gave out a hiss, he said, much like a wildcat's, judging from his imitation of the sound. Covering 50 feet in 3 jumps, it fled through some brush along a railroad embankment that runs near the McDaniel home. State police summoned by the frightened McDaniel arrived too late to spot the creature, but discovered its tracks in the soft earth about the home. McDaniel said the track was like a dog's, except it had 6 toe pads. One of the troopers, James Masser, said McDaniel appeared rational and sober. McDaniel said he was sure it wasn't a dog and was positive it wasn't a kangaroo because he said he once had a pet kangaroo while serving with the Army in Australia. Asked how he was able to note so many details of the creature in such a short space of time and in the dark, McDaniel said, I have a photostatic memory. And then he recalled the creature's body was almost like a human body.
Ew.
He said some school children told him they had seen a similar creature at the school ballpark. If they do find it, they will find more than one, and they won't be from this planet, I can tell you that, he said. Enfield is about 10 miles west of Carmi, White County, in southeastern Illinois.
Wow.
A couple things I want to point out here. First of all, you'll note that this article mentions that it was 50 feet of distance, and there are several other sources that say 75 feet. It was reported on over and over. I think people are just guessing the distance there. It doesn't mean that the whole story isn't true. So there's
right.
that.
We measured it, and it can't be possible.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing I want to point out is that Enfield is an interesting town. Population at this time was around 600. It's actually less now. I think it's 400 or 500 now. It's only 1 square mile in size. And you know when you look on Wikipedia how they have notable persons?
Yeah.
The Enfield webpage has notable person, singular. There's a notable person. And listen to this. This is a ball player. His name was Lefty Jamerson, which sounds like a name I would make up when I'm writing a short story in kindergarten.
Or one of the featured players in Field of Dreams.
Yeah, well, there's no baseball card on this guy because as you might imagine from his name, he batted and pitched left-handed. And here's his claim to fame. He pitched for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
In 1 inning, in 1 game against the St. Louis Browns, August 16th, 1924.
Wow.
So that was way before this happened, but he allowed 2 runs on 1 hit and 3 walks. He never played in the majors again, but he did play for 1 season with an NFL team too, the Hartford Blues, and they only played 1 season in the NFL. So I don't know if he was cursed or whatever, but he played the minors the rest of his career and then was a head football coach at the University of Memphis and later Davidson College right here in my home state of North Carolina.
Right.
Just north of Charlotte on Lake Norman or very close. Nice area. Then he, when he passed away, he was living in Mocksville. Mocksville is about an hour, a little over an hour from me, and it is also the hometown of our former guest on the show and the guy who designed our logo, Tommy Beaver, who told the story of the White Horse of Greensboro. And I don't know if you remember us talking. I can't remember if we talked about it on this show, but there's this weird thing where Mocksville is sort of an unofficial collection of strange paranormal events for North Carolina. It's not in the lore books, but we know of lots of stories relating to it. And I thought it was interesting that Lefty Jamerson wound up in Mocksville, which is where he died. So anyway.
Wow. Everything is almost or slightly connected.
Connected if you look really hard, and maybe it's not really in this case, but we're making it connected, but you know.
No, that's what the title is of South Park. A lot of people know that, but the animated show is that why is it got that crazy opening? Because it's just known for being a weird hotspot for all this weirdness. Yeah.
And here's another thing that's fascinating. Our editor, who's been with us for years and is a miracle worker at making our show sound amazing, is from Carterville, which is just 60 miles southwest of Enfield. And she was texting us. She was like, wait, she was looking into folders and stuff we were sending tonight. And she noticed that we, because we tracked down Henry McDaniel's draft card, which we'll put up with the webpage for this episode. And it showed that he was from Clainsboro, Illinois. And she said that her team used to play them in high school. So she's right from that very area, although she would have been born after this happened. So anyway, another little connection there with our very dear friend Sarah.
But I wondered how she was going to react to this story because it's all over the place down there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It makes me want to go over there and check it out. So I just helped my mom downsize homes because she's getting to the point where that makes sense. And I moved her from her house to a nice apartment down at the beach near her mother.
Oh, that sounds really nice. Wait, your grandmother's still alive?
Yep, she turns 95 in just a few days.
Wow, well, you're really lucky to have all these moms in your life, aren't you?
You know what, I am. And I'm getting my mom something this year for Mother's Day that my family actually gave my grandmother a while back. A skylight frame.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so since they're both down at the beach now, a good ways from me, it's the perfect gift to remind them who their favorite son and favorite grandson are.
Well, I know you're your mom's only child, but aren't you like one of 5 grandchildren for your mom's mom?
Yes, but I was still first. So I'm number 1 grandson, as my grandfather used to say. And with the skylight frame we got my grandmother a while back, I was able to load that up with extra pictures of me so no one forgets that.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you and a little insidious, my friend.
Well, I'm going to preload this one for my mom, too. So all she has to do is plug it in. It's the perfect Mother's Day present. Folks, the skylight frame sets up in less than 60 seconds, and you don't have to be tech savvy to do it. It looks just like a real photo frame, and it matches the decor of any home. It's got a gorgeous 10-inch touchscreen, and you can swipe through photos with your finger. You can even tap to thank the person who sent pictures you like, which they didn't used to do that, but that's something they've added now, so it's very cool.
It is one of the best gifts I've ever given and one of the most appreciated, and it's also 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't love it, Skylight will offer you a full refund.
Yeah, my super old aunt, who never listens to the show, was able to set my grandmother's skylight frame up in just a few minutes.
I know you didn't just say that.
No, I'm safe. She never listens. Totally safe. And also, I wasn't talking about you, Laurie.
I see, because I take it Laurie listens.
Yeah, she listens on road trips, so.
Okay, then. Well, now as a special holiday offer, you can get $10 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com and enter code LEGENDS.
That's right. To get $10 off your purchase of a skylight frame, just go to skylightframe.com and enter code LEGENDS.
That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com and use code LEGENDS.
One of my favorite things about this gig, the show, is that we're constantly getting onto a new topic, and that's what keeps me interested in it. I never get tired of learning something new.
Oh, absolutely, my man. I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, and that's why we both love Wondrium so much.
Wondrium is perfect for us because being immersed in the paranormal all the time makes Jack a dull boy. So, yeah, we got to round out our ongoing quest for new knowledge with some not-so-high strangeness, too, from time to time.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I just found an astounding series of lectures on Wondrium called Ordinary Americans in the Revolution, taught by Dr. Richard Bell, a Harvard graduate and associate professor of history at the University of Maryland. And this series is about how ordinary people got involved and became significant players in the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Deborah Sampson. You probably never heard of her. Deborah was an indentured servant who grew to an astonishing height of 5'7" by the time she was 18.
Wow.
And 7 years into the revolution, she was 22. She had won her freedom, and interest in enlisting had waned. So recruiters were turning a blind eye to folks who signed up that might not, meet all the requirements to enlist. She changed her name to Robert Shirtleaf and enlisted in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment, getting $60 silver in exchange for promising 3 years of service. The other recruits called her Bob. Now, there's a lot of lore around her service as Bob, but Dr. Bell says she was definitely wounded twice in skirmishes on the front lines. And eventually, Bob served in an elite light infantry unit before the war was over, at which point, for reasons unclear to history, Bob was outed as Deborah. Her military record was so pristine, and she was so well respected that there was no prosecution for her deception, and she went on to get married after the war and have 3 children.
Wow, that is courageous. What an amazing life story. Ordinary indeed. So, what became of her?
Well, Dr. Bell actually goes into a lot about what happened to her after the war, and it's all pretty fascinating. But if you want to hear more about it, then we suggest you head over to wondrium.com and sign up.
Absolutely. You know, at Wondrium, you can learn about anything and everything, not just history, but art, literature, cooking, guitar lessons, robotics, you name it.
With unlimited ad-free access, all for a fraction of the cost of a college course, and with no homework or grades. Plus, you can take learning on the go with the Wondrium app, where you can watch or just listen along, just like a podcast.
Yeah, trust us. We know you're going to love Wondrium as much as we do. So sign up now through our special URL to start your free trial when you sign up for the discounted annual plan. Go to wondrium.com/legends.
Don't wait. Get your learning on today. That's wondrium.com/legends.
Hey, my name is Shadow Sense, and when I'm not producing electronic music, I'm listening to Astonishing Legends. Now, let's get back to the show.
Well, getting back to Henry's story here, again, he said he grabbed a pistol, he shot it, he was sure he hit it. He said, I know I hit it. This thing leaps 3 times, and it's either 50 or 75 feet away into the brush that covered a railroad embankment lining the property of the McDaniel's house. Point is, if this thing is real, if it's like Mothman, if it's some kind of weird cryptid, that doesn't seem that impossible because a lot of people describe these things. Look, skinwalkers running by the side of a car doing 75.
Yeah.
Moving impossibly far distances. That's all part of this whole cryptid show, folks. It's like with Mothman. I think what the description was, remember the very first sighting, not with the kids in the car, but the workers, and they were either highway workers or at the cemetery. Yeah, they were digging some holes, of course. They saw this thing kind of leap up, and it flapped a couple of times, but not so much that as would be needed to achieve flight by a winged creature.
Right.
Maybe they're got 1 foot into this reality and still 1 foot into theirs, and they're able to operate at these tremendous and unbelievable feats of locomotion, shall we say. So keep that in mind. It sounds pretty crazy already, I know. Well, that's not it, because then Henry McDaniel had another sighting, again on May 6th. Around 3 a.m., McDaniel awoke to the howling of the neighborhood dogs, and he looks out his front door and recalls, quote, I seen something moving out on the railroad track, and there it stood. I didn't shoot at it or anything. It started on down the railroad track. It wasn't in a hurry or anything, end quote. And after McDaniel's report went public, Enfield was then flooded with the media, paranormal researchers, thrill seekers, and curious citizens. On May 8th, 2 young men were arrested by Deputy Sheriff Jim Clark on hunting violations when they claimed they had seen a gray, hairy creature and shot at it as it lurked in the bushes, and they thought they had hit it too before it ran off faster than a human could run. Well, Loren Coleman interviewed 2 of their friends from Elwood, Indiana, who weren't arrested, Roger Tappy and Mike Mogul, who confirmed the incident.
There were 5 guys total.
Right.
One of these guys was named Roger Patterson.
Not the Roger Patterson.
I was like, wait, that can't be. And it's like, no, it can't be, because poor Roger passed away from cancer the year before, or right before this happened. But I just thought it was interesting. You've got a cryptid hunter on the scene for this the year after Roger died. But, I think he was in his teens or whatever. And his name was Roger Patterson. So,
well, not totally uncommon, different cryptid. But the reason that we're going to throw these names at you, of course, nobody you've heard of, is that these are real people. It's not just a man reported, and it's like, well, who? You can't track them down, because a lot of people want, like, this is a real person. This is a real story. Now, whether you believe they are trustworthy, we're going to get to a little bit later, but at least these are real folks. Well, there's another one with a maybe an unbelievable name, but not for radio in the 70s. Loren also interviewed another witness, the news director for radio station WWKI out of Kokomo, Indiana, who had his own sighting, along with 3 other associates. And this group had seen a similar beast again on May 6th, near the old abandoned house near Henry McDaniel's property. The creature had its back to them as it ran through the shadows, so they couldn't get a good look, but the group described it as ape-like, around 5.5 feet tall, grayish colored, and stooped. Now, Rick Rainbow's friend shot at the creature and missed, but Rainbow did manage to get a recording of the creature making something described as an ape-like, short, screeching sound. Rainbow was so shaken, he called Loren back to talk about how something like that was possible. And yes, I said Rick Rainbow.
Yeah.
That's his radio name, right?
That's his radio name. And even Loren, when he was tweeting at us today, he was like, you're not going to believe this. The guy's name is Rick Rainbow. And I had been on Ancestry doing some research anyway on our original witness, Henry McDaniel. And I found Rick Rainbow, and it is a stage name. Probably, I don't think anyone knows this. I feel like, hey, this is breaking news from Astonishing Legends.
Right.
His actual surname was Rainbolt, Bolt.
Yeah.
I found him Richard Rainbolt, and it, indicated that he was the same guy. But yeah, so he must have changed it to Rainbow to get a little more color.
No, well, you know what it is sometimes, because my dad was in advertising and he dealt a lot with radio stations and DJs, right? Because you're buying airtime and you're getting your clients ads on there and they're reading the ads, so you get to know them. And what he told me when I was a kid a lot of the time is that, DJs will do that. First of all, it may stave off some of the crazies trying to find you. It's like, I know you were speaking to my soul when you were on the radio, and I need to commune with you. So the point, though, is that you have an on-air name, especially if you're a DJ, because if you get arrested, your real name shows up in the media and the papers. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why you have a stage name is that, so if something, not that you're going to do anything bad, but if something happens.
Is it too late for us to change our names?
No, that ship sailed when we launched the first show. But we did think about that, but it's like, man, that is hard to keep up. Plus, Better Call Saul. Saul Goodman,
Anyway, good old-fashioned astonishing tangent there with Rick Rainbow.
You got to go with it. Well, that's the point, though, is that it's Rick Rainbow, but it's a real person, and he really was the news director for a real radio station, WWKI. So he claims that he was pretty shaken up and that they did get a recording. Now, you had some news about the recording?
Yeah, while we were putting the finishing touches on the outline tonight before we were going to record, I was like, wait, we should try to find this. Nobody in the research group, everybody said that it existed. And so I thought, well, I wonder if it's still out there and if Loren Coleman might have it. He's got a museum. Maybe he still has it. So I tweeted at Loren. I sent him a message. I wasn't sure if he'd be on. He's not on Twitter necessarily every day, but I just said, do you have the audio of the Enfield Monster available for sharing? And I sent that at 4:10 p.m. Eastern time, and he got back to me like within the hour, and he wrote, lost in translation, hidden in the archives, the 4-decade search for the small cassette tape continues. So I guess that's not around.
It's in the same shoebox as the original PGF film,
And then he added, amazingly, the reporter's name who recorded the Enfield cryptids screeching was Rick Rainbow. So, and then he posted some photos that he said we could use. So you can see some of those on our page, or you can see them in our Twitter feed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coleman.
Yes, thank you so much. And thanks for getting back to us so quick. So I guess that recording is not around. Henry McDaniel did an interview with WGN that we looked for and have been unable to find. We're not done looking for it, but it might be pretty hard to find. So that would be cool to hear or dig up, as it were.
People get Bigfoot calls all the time, so you're either going to believe it or not. But when I hear Bigfoot calls, it's very distinctive and it's chilling.
Yeah, and they described this sound as ape-like. I think he did too. And there's been a lot of opinions about what this thing might have been because people that identified it visually said, no, that's not what we're dealing with here. And I think in the end, didn't Loren say? I'm not sure that that's right, but the sound matched that kind of sound, which then takes you back to the whole idea of, is this got some sort of humanoid component to it?
This thing ain't done screeching, okay?
Right.
So we're going to hear about that in a second here, but you just heard and got the brief overview of the encounters, mainly from Loren Coleman's POV from his book, of course. But keep in mind that he actually went to these places and he interviewed some of the key witnesses. But now we're going to read an article that occurred just after this event that has a more, shall we say, tongue-in-cheek attitude about the whole affair from the townsfolk, and of course the POV of the newspaper reporter. Now, as I read this, think about the coverage of the Kelly Hopkinsville Goblin incident. And another thing to keep in mind, I really wasn't sure if we should read this whole article. I mean, it's not that long, so don't worry. But after talking it over with Scott, we decided, why not? I mean, because this isn't just a story about a monster, right? Or even a whole copse of monsters. It's also a story about regular people just like you and me. It's a story about the Midwest and small-town America, and how the good folks that live in the heartland of this great nation of ours handle something this incredible. And if that sounds corny, well, there's nothing corny about fresh-faced youngsters skipping to school and scraping knees and smelling bees and pies cooling softly on the windowsill. Well, sir, if that's corny, then corn me up.
Wait. This is familiar to me. That's from The Simpsons. That's from The Simpsons.
Yes. Season 9, episode 2, The Principal and the Pauper.
Let's get to the story. Just read the story.
Now, this article appeared in the Reading Eagle Wednesday, August 22nd, 1973, by reporter Chris Detro of the Copley News Service. So, as we've all know, these reports will get borrowed if they're part of a UPI or an Associated Press, or they go out on the wire. And it goes a little something like this. Enfield, Illinois. It all started down here a couple of weeks ago. Down here in Enfield, in White County, Illinois, when this good old boy, Henry McDaniel, heard this scratching at his front door. He opened the door and he saw this critter. And it looked like nothing Henry had ever seen before, or like nothing you or me had ever seen either, for that matter. Henry says that it was about 4 to 5 feet tall and was covered with gray fur. And it had a good-sized, wide head. Common enough so far. Then it starts sounding a little different. I shone my flashlight on it and saw these two eyes, about 3 inches apart, kind of glowing red or pink back at me, like truck reflectors. And it had 3 legs, right in a row, standing there just like a man. Its arms were short and stubby, Henry recalls. That was on April 25th, and Henry says he saw the same thing standing on the B&O railroad tracks outside his house again on May 6th. Well, you'd think that with a critter like this running around loose, the whole town of Enfield, population 750, about 30 miles from Kentucky as the crow flies, would either be shivering in their shorts behind locked doors or else fielding a small army to go out and look for it. Not so. In fact, nobody is really doing anything, because nobody, well, almost nobody, believes Henry. To find out how the townspeople feel about Henry's monster, you don't have to do much except sit. Somebody will bring it up. Quote, I hate to dispute somebody's word on something like that, says the waitress at the Echo Cafe and Motel, but I doubt it. The Echo Cafe and Motel looks to be just about the most modern business in Enfield. And it isn't really in Enfield, but it is a mile south of town at the intersection of routes 45 and 460. Has all the excitement helped business any? Nah, not a bit, she said with a disgruntled shake of her head. You'd think it would have, though, wouldn't you? I think it's about all over now anyway. I heard the sheriff told him he'd better not be seeing any more monsters out there or he'd be off to the funny farm. And somebody said he's left town. Somebody else asked her if they'd caught the monster yet. No, but if we do, we're going to butcher him and eat him. White County Sheriff Roy Poshard Jr., a young sheriff with thick, muscular arms and chest, is a little more sure of himself. No, there ain't a damn thing to it, he says flatly. I let all that stuff go on until he got people with guns out there, and then I went out and told him, if I hear any more from out here, I'm hauling you in. Well, he did haul in 5 monster hunters May 8th and fined them for hunting violations. Nothing, especially monsters, is in season now, according to Poshard. But the sheriff is in the White County seat of Carmi, 11 miles away. You go into Enfield expecting to hear a little more on the monster. Reba Trapp thinks they're making a mountain out of a molehill. She owns Reba's Cafe, which shares a building with a Gulf gasoline station. I ordered from a menu above the counter that said, no swearing allowed, be good or be gone, at the end. Reba has been there a long time. A truck driver was sharing the latest on the monster. The information he was telling the other patrons at Reba's consisted on an account of a University of Illinois anthropology student recording a screech and his assessment that it might have come from a type of ape. I think I'm going to apply for hazardous driving pay every time I come to Enfield, he said, but he wasn't serious. Mrs. McDaniel, an attractive, olive-skinned mother of 3, was in the house when Henry saw his quote-unquote monster, and she's glad she didn't see it. McDaniel, a disabled World War II veteran, has 2 guns in the house, a little .22, which he says makes a pretty good hole, now sits by the door just in case. And the other one is in the bedroom, where McDaniel once shot a hole through his wall at something that was fooled around out back of his house. It might have been that thing then. I don't know. Anyway, about 9:30, Henry heard the scratching outside his door and looked out and saw something. He thought it was an animal, maybe a bear. We have bears down here sometimes. He got his gun and a flashlight and went outside where the wind was blowing strongly. He spotted something between two rose bushes to the left of a big maple tree in his front yard. When he got to within 8 feet of the thing, he shined his light right in its eyes. That's when the light came back pink at him. And that's when Henry fired his gun 4 times. And he's sure he hit the thing once. It just hissed. Did you ever hear a cottonmouth hiss? Well, that's how it sounded. And then it jumped into those weeds over there, Henry said, pointing to some thick growth. And then it jumped again over that ditch, and then a third time onto the tracks. I never did see it turn, it just jumped. The total distance from the rose bushes to the B&O tracks is about 75 feet. All around the tracks is scrub brush and undergrowth so thick you could dump a body in it and they'd not find it for a year. Then Henry jumped the ditch and got on the tracks and shined his light. By the time Henry had gone about 80 feet, the thing had gone bootin' and a scootin' a good 440 yards down to where the tracks curved. The state police had somebody here in a hurry, said Mrs. McDaniel, but they didn't produce any monster. His tracks and some fur on the bushes were all that were left, McDaniel said. Station WWKI in Kokomo, Indiana, sent a guy down for 2 days, Rick Rainbow. Yes, Rick Rainbow. And he supposedly recorded the same type screech recorded by the UI student. Henry McDaniel says when he saw the monster, it didn't do anything but give a loud, short hiss, and that only when he shot it. When Rainbow came to Enfield, he brought Ed Phillips with him. Ed owns a pet shop in Kokomo, and McDaniel says that he is also a big game hunter. He brought tranquilizer guns and other monster hunting paraphernalia with him, but never got to use it. That's because Poshard put a stop to any and all monster hunting. Rainbow says that he also saw what he thought was the monster in an open end of an abandoned shed near Springerton, north of Enfield. He said it was 5 to 5.5 feet tall and was gray-black in color. But nobody believes Rainbow either. The newest lead on the monster came from Myrtis Fields. She's the Enfield town treasurer and also the stringer for the Carmi newspaper and radio station WROY. She got a letter addressed to the publisher of the Enfield newspaper. Myrtis is not the publisher of the Enfield newspaper because there isn't a newspaper in Enfield, but she opened the letter anyway. It was from Alan Yorkshire of Elyria, Ohio. He thinks the monster is his pet kangaroo, Macy, who was lost or stolen over a year ago. And he's offering a $500 reward for information leading to the capture of his kangaroo and is supposed to come to Enfield. Henry doesn't think he'll show up, though. And even if he does, it won't do him any good because Henry's sure it's not a kangaroo. I used to have one as a pet myself, he says, until I sold it to this fella that had an animal show. And kangaroo tracks have claw marks, and a kangaroo has a narrow face, and this wasn't no kangaroo. The treatment he's getting from the rest of the town bothers Henry and his wife, and a derogatory poem is being circulated about Henry and the monster, which makes McDaniel wonder. Well, they think I'm crazy, he said. I can't help what I saw. But it's not my problem. That thing kills somebody. It just isn't my problem. If I see it again, though, I'm going to call the FBI, not the sheriff. There's other people that seen it, too. They just ain't saying anything. I just wish all of this was over, said Mrs. McDaniel. Well, I did my best not to do a Garrison Keillor impression where the men are strong and the women are good looking and the children are above average. I don't remember. I haven't heard that show in so many years. I forgot how he speaks. But yes, no, it's the. I'm being serious here. Did you get a tone from that article?
Yeah, I got a tone of condescension, a tone of someone from the big city making fun of small town folks, treating them as rubes. And
a slightly bigger city, yeah.
I mean, this guy, Henry, is a disabled World War II veteran. His father fought in World War I.
Yeah.
Because I found the records on these folks. His wife was from Chattanooga. This guy's seen the world. He had a pet kangaroo in Australia. He's not like, no matter how eccentric he might be, and God only knows how he would be. I don't know. I couldn't find the military records. But he definitely was a veteran. He was, in fact, when he passed away at a VA hospital. So there's no question that he was an actual veteran.
Yeah.
But God only knows what he went through or what he saw in World War II.
Yeah,
so if he was a little bit eccentric, he might have been, but it just bothers me, these articles like this that are like, oh, nobody believes Henry, and everybody just is a rube. And it reminds me of Kelly Hopkinsville. It's like they were just a bunch of dumb, drunk rednecks, and they wanted to make money on their story. And the thing about Henry was he was ready to, by all accounts, the research that we've done so far, is he was, on the phone nonstop with reporters. He was getting sick of talking about it, thinking of, when they said, I heard when that waitress at the hotel said, oh, by the way, you know me, I'm collecting strange things. I told folks on the Junk Drawer show the other day that the main show, you guys haven't heard this, but I got a receipt from Charles Fort's grandfather's grocery business in Albany. It's signed by Charles Fort's grandfather. And I bought
Peter
it from
Van Frankenfort, I think.
Peter Van Frankenfort. And it's so interesting to me because the person who had it, it was just like, you want to buy these old grocery slips? It was only like $4, $5, which is awesome. Right. So now I got this thing that his grandfather, from the business that Charles Fort refused to work at. But what I was going to say is the other thing I got, Forrest, and I think I showed you a picture of this, was that interview that they did regarding, from the story you just read, with the waitress who was like, yeah, it hasn't improved business and he's crazy and whatever else. That was at a hotel in the area, and I got a postcard from that hotel. I showed you the picture. I bought the postcard. Again, that was like $4. So I'm going to put that on the wall. People can be like, what's that? And I can be like, well, this is the postcard where they interviewed the lady who said that Henry McDaniel was crazy about talking about the Enfield Monster. But anyway, it's a very chic-looking hotel. Yeah. It's really cool, very 60s, mid-century. It's a neat hotel on the postcard. I looked for it on Google Maps. It's not there anymore. Here's the other thing I wanted to say is while you were reading the article, that kangaroo, and I'm sure they can do this, but that kangaroo, if it was that man's kangaroo from Ohio, it would have had to travel 480 miles.
Oh,
without getting hit by a car or a truck or being seen by anyone along the way and making the news as a, rando kangaroo that's gone 500 miles.
Well, this one can travel 50 to 75 feet in 3 hops. So there you go.
Yeah, that hopping part is interesting. But, also he said it had 3 feet, which is one of the craziest things. At 3 feet, then it's got the eye shine, all that stuff. It's fascinating.
No, here's the thing. Again, he, you might think he's, one explanation is that it's just a scam to bring tourism to Enfield. And it's like, well, think about it. It's like you show up in Enfield and there's nothing there. That's it. It's not like, here are some tracks, or if you hang out, you might be able to see the Marfa lights. If you hang out, maybe you'll see, the Brown Mountain lights, because those happen every once in a while. That kind of stuff brings people continually. It's like, where was the kangaroo? I don't know. There's some tracks and it's gone now because it rained. Yeah. There's nothing to do there. So it's kind of a weak plan. Not to jump ahead, but that's one excuse people were saying, like, well, he's just, causing a ruckus and pulling a prank and this and that.
I distinctly heard a ruckus.
Right.
Somebody will get that.
Well, if he's being accurate about what he saw, if he does have that eidetic memory, he was close to this thing. He's not 50 feet away. Apparently this thing was 10 feet. That's why he was so sure he hit it, if you believe him.
He was also younger than I am now. Right. And I feel like I'm pretty sentient. Now, I haven't been to war, thank God. Right. I hope that I never have to go. But like I said, who knows what his experiences were like. But as they said, he was a rational and sober person.
Right. He didn't smell of booze, and he wasn't a raving maniac. The sheriff, the police officers there said, like, well, yeah, he seems pretty, he's startled, of course, but he's a pretty sound mind. And guess what? To this day, Carmi is a very small town. I was just watching some news reports from it, and as they say nowadays, it's a very small town. Everybody knows each other. So when the Carmi high school wrestlers went and shoveled everyone's walks, they knew all the people there. That's small town life in America. The other thing I want to say is that people might object is like, well, he's just shooting a gun off in all directions or whatever, and that's dangerous. It's like, no, you have to picture where this was in 73 especially. There's nothing around. He's not going to hit anything. It's just the railroad tracks. It's not you in your suburb now where it's pretty crowded, and yes, you shouldn't do that.
It's not even suburbia.
Yeah.
It's country. I'm pretty sure I figured out where the house may still be standing. We don't have a street address.
Yeah.
But I found the area where there's double tracks and there's a bend in the tracks, and this town's only 1 square mile. I'm pretty sure I can pinpoint almost exactly where this happened. I don't know which side of the tracks he was on, But yeah.
Yeah, and it does help, I would say, when you go to investigate it. So let's continue on with that, shall we? So
Indeed.
on May 12th, Loren Coleman actually heard the creature himself making a high-pitched screech. Loren happened to be with someone, you're going to dig this, Scott, someone we've talked about before in our Resurrection Mary series, Chicago radio host, writer, and paranormal researcher Richard Crowe.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of Richard Crowe.
Yeah.
Like, where is his work? I want to.
I know.
I want to hear
We
more.
want to pirate it.
I've heard his voice is. It's kind of like Hoyt Axton in Gremlins. You know, the
I
guy
love
that sold
it.
him the
I
Gremlin.
love
He has a
that,
very
yeah.
deep, really cool voice, and he was a prominent part of the Resurrection Mary series.
Yes.
And so I love the idea of Richard Crowe and Loren Coleman in this little town looking for this
yeah.
thing. It's just
that is
sublime.
Right. Again, like I said, you can say this is all ridiculous. These people are pulling one over on us, but I say that is fun. I would love to go legend tripping. Now, not to say I might not soil myself had I been 10 feet away from this thing and it lunges at me. I don't know how I'm going to behave, but I'm willing to take that risk. Wow, I just got the coolest book from Page One Books.
Oh yeah, me too.
Well, what'd you get?
I got the revised and expanded new edition of Dark City, Eddie Muller's seminal book on film noir. It is so amazing, and it's the perfect addition to the astonishing library. How about you? What'd you get?
Well, I got something that everyone in the audience is going to be envious of. I got Snow Glass Apples.
Oh, the Neil Gaiman story.
Yep, exactly. Well, Snow White is told from the stepmother's point of view, but it's the 2019 edition with stunning artwork by Colleen Duran and lettering by Todd Klein. That book itself is a work of art.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that book in the store. It is gorgeous. And Colleen Duran's work reminds me of Muka, who's one of my favorite artists. So that's really cool. Well, there is no question that Page One knocked it out of the park for both of us. And we should have known, actually. Tessa's been talking about this business for a while now, and I can totally see why.
Yeah.
She follows Page One on Instagram and absolutely loves it, which is why we just gave her a subscription to it for her birthday.
Yeah, Bookstagram. Well, getting books chosen for you and delivered to your door each month couldn't be easier. The Page One book subscription is a personalized service that hand selects books for you. It's not a robot, okay? So think Stitch Fix for your library. Page One's picks are based on your preferences and their knowledge. Because live, human, indie booksellers know that you are more than just an algorithm.
Page One books serve subscribers all over the U.S. and beyond, but their home base is an independent bookstore in Evanston, Illinois. Same state as our story from tonight, actually. Local bookstores are a dying breed, and online sales from small stores rather than big box companies is one way to keep them alive.
Yes.
Through subscriptions, Page One wants to give everyone the kind of personalized service that they used to get from their neighborhood booksellers. For yourself, or as the perfect gift for a book lover, this is the subscription that fits all sizes. Here's how it works. Choose a 3, 6, or 12-month subscription. Fill out the short questionnaire about your likes and dislikes, desires, hopes, and dreams, or just share a link to your Goodreads or Storygraph account. Page One does their magical literary matchmaking.
Yeah, it's pretty magic. Well, you receive a book hand-chosen for you, beautifully wrapped, I might add, with a special literary treat enclosed. And if you ever receive a book that's not a good fit, you can refine your preferences as you go. Replacements are sent at no cost.
Yeah, I actually got those little refrigerator magnets that you can do the poetry with.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, they have audio and ebook options, gift cards, and even gift bundles with personal items. The Mother's Day bundle comes with not only a book hand-picked based on your mom's favorite reading, but a mug, coaster, a tin of literary tea, a personalized card, a spa eye pillow, and a celebrated book of poetry that debunks the supermom, superwoman myth.
Wow. Well, Page One Books has the personal touch of an indie bookstore with the delight and surprise of an online subscription service, curated just for you. First-time subscribers get 15% off with the code AL.
Visit pageonebooks.com and tell them what you love. Remember to use the code AL to get 15% off.
Cerebral is an online mental health service that offers prescription medication, counseling, and therapy for anxiety, depression, ADHD, insomnia, and more.
You know, I don't know if it's just getting a little bit older, but I guess I feel like the more time I spend on this planet, the more I realize how many folks are struggling with mental health issues.
Well, it's definitely become less stigmatized to talk about these days than it used to be, especially after these last few years and the ongoing lingering effects of them. The good news is that there are now services like Cerebral. It's one of the few that provides prescription medication online through a licensed provider and then ships medication straight to your door. There's no need to go to a pharmacy.
That's right. And with the Cerebral mobile app, it's like having your personal care team where you are. You can message your care team and access self-care resources wherever you are. Connect with your counselor and therapist on your own schedule through your laptop or the Cerebral mobile app.
Yeah, and this means you can schedule sessions based on what's most convenient for you, not them. You don't have to wait weeks to be seen. In fact, 80% of members see a provider within 5 days.
Yeah, you can do your sessions on a laptop or a phone, so you can always find an area at your home where you're most comfortable having the conversation. 82% of cerebral patients report reduced anxiety, and cerebral clinicians are rated 4.9 out of 5 by their patients.
Yeah, these treatments are affordable. Just 1/3 the price of traditional therapy, and treatment options are available with or without insurance, which we know can be tricky these days for folks who are out of work or don't have coverage.
Yeah, but Cerebral is also in network for several insurers, and they're working every day to grow their partnerships. With in network, your monthly cost is even lower.
Yeah, and on top of that, 50% of Cerebral's clinicians self-identify as people of color. So it's important to Cerebral to have the diversity so everyone can get the treatment they deserve.
Listeners of our show can receive 65% off your first month of medication management and care counseling at cerebral.com/AL.
Go to cerebral.com/AL for 65% off your first month. That's just a total of $30 to get started.
Join Cerebral today on their mission to make quality mental health care accessible and affordable for all.
Hello, this is Aleko with the Intelligent Design Collective podcast. And when I'm not searching for the uncaused cause of metaphysics, I'm listening to Astonishing Legends. Let's get back to the show.
Calling back to Charles Fort, his last book, Wild Talents, one of the main tenets of the book was that people could do these outrageous, amazing things, maybe like ESP, all these other things that they do because it's a primordial sense or talent or skill that sounds outrageous now, but was developed throughout the evolution of humanity to keep us alive. That
Right.
feeling of sensing eyes on you, like, you better get out of here, buddy. There's a large jungle cat in the bushes and he's ready to pounce. You may not see or hear him, but you know you're being watched. Get out of there. Or climb a tree, monkey man. So these ideas, though, are not that crazy. Maybe they're just evolutionary. They're just invisible.
Yeah.
A little over a month after the Enfield encounter, which occurred on May 25th, on June 6th, there were 3 reports from Loren's book, quote, of a musty-smelling, red-eyed, human-sized creature, end quote, roaming the woods on the eastern edge of the town of Edwardsville, Illinois. It was reported at, get this, 5.5 feet tall, with broad shoulders and with eyes that were light-sensitive. It also walked silently. Witnesses told police that the creature chased them, and one witness telling police that this thing had ripped his shirt and clawed his chest. 2 sightings of what might be the same monster occurred on June 4th, and 1 sighting on June 8th. All 3 sightings happened in the woods near the creeks of Mooney, Little Mooney, and Sugar Creek. Well, as another one of our favorite radio personalities says, that's not the end of the story. Or was it? Or was it? That's not Keith Morrison. That is...
It's Paul Harvey.
That's right.
And that's the rest of the story.
So, no, that wasn't the end of the sightings, but what'd you think of the ones we just covered here?
Well, it's interesting. These areas are spread out a pretty good ways, but they all... The other thing that's crazy about them is that Enfield is the hub, and those places are spokes of sightings. From what I can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a cursory research thing on Google Maps or whatever, but you look at Enfield and you've got something happening off to the northeast, something happening off to the northwest, something happening off to the southwest. And so if you're looking at it, I mean, the stuff I've looked up so far, it's almost like the 5 side of a dice, of a side, 1 die.
You wonder if this is indeed the same beast and it's real. How's it getting around?
Well, the other thing I was looking at a second ago was the railroad maps, because it's going to these towns that seem like they might have been linked by the train, but I don't know. You know, I mean, you get this like alien thing riding a train. Maybe it's got a UFO that it can call on, or it's interdimensional, if you believe any of this at all. But the other thing that was exciting for me was when I heard about when Henry McDaniel was talking about it. Went out there to the tracks. It's the B&O railroad tracks, which is the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad.
Yeah.
And I know it very, very well, because when I was a kid, I came from humble beginnings. My mom and my parents were divorced, and my mom And there's a train right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can hear that. But anyway, the first and coolest thing I got when I was a kid, and it didn't have a lot of stuff because my mom and I were broke, was an HO scale B&O railroad.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
And so I had that on it. It was on a piece of plywood, a 4x8 piece of plywood, which is grass. I didn't have buildings or anything, but like,
oh, yeah.
But I remember I spent so much time like playing with that train and looking at that locomotive. I know exactly what it looks like. It had the colors with like blue and gold and so the minute I was like, I hadn't thought about the B&O since I was a kid. Anyway, so
Topeka and the Atchison and Santa Fe.
Ew, nice.
No, in this one, I know exactly what you're talking about, and also what kind of creeps me out about. I don't know how far away this is, but it makes me think of Velisca and some serial killer who has the devil whispering in his ear, riding the rails, murdering people at will. Ew. Okay, well, talking about the continuation, there are some other incidents that happened, and I wonder if it's not the same thing, or if it is, or a variation, because it does make a difference. Now, who's our creature feature coming up next?
Well, it's the Big Muddy Monster. This is from page 144 of Loren Coleman's book, Bigfoot, The True Story of Apes in America. Loren talks about the sightings of the Big Muddy Monster, named that because of the sightings that occurred in the summer of 1973 near the Big Muddy River. And several rivers, that's their nickname, but this is the actual name of this river. So shortly after midnight on June 25th, 1973, Randy Needham and Judy Johnson were parked on a boat ramp on the Big Muddy River near Murfreesboro, Illinois. The couple was startled to hear an inhuman screech coming from the nearby woods. They described it as, quote, about 3 times as loud as a bobcat, only deeper, end quote. The couple looked up to find a huge upright beast walking on 2 legs approaching them, still shrieking, but now in what Loren described as alerting tones.
Yeah.
Both people concurred the biped was about 7 feet tall with short white body hair that was matted with river mud. The creature got as close as 20 feet from the couple before they sped off to the Murfreesboro police station. 2 Murfreesboro police officers, Merrill Lindsay and Jimmy Nash, investigated the site and filed a report saying they found footprints they described as, quote, impressions in the mud approximately 10 to 12 inches long and approximately 3 inches wide, end quote. Randy Needham later described the footprints as being, quote, something like a man with a shoe on would make, only the thing wasn't wearing shoes, end quote. Needham, that's one of the couple, also thought that toe prints might not have registered in the mud. Also, according to Loren's book, officers Jimmy Nash and Merrill Lindsay witnessed Randy Needham, that's the person we were just talking about.
Yeah, the male of the couple.
The male. And Deputy Sheriff Bob Scott returned to the scene around 2 a.m. and discovered something even more unusual. There were fresh tracks similar in appearance to the ones left an hour earlier, but these were deeper and smaller.
There's a baby.
A baby. It's a baby.
White.
Yeah. And the police report noted something especially odd. From the book and the report, it stated, quote, the prints in the mud were very erratic and that no 2 were the same distance apart and some were 5 to 6 feet apart. Also, prints were found very close together.
Now that comes from the police report.
Right.
Okay, so the police are finding this. Okay, so I just have a quick comment here. You know, this unexpected pattern of prints also seems to sometimes happen with examinations of more traditional Bigfoot tracks. Remember, researchers have claimed that they've seen tracks that just stop in snow or mud, or find a single footprint all by itself in the same condition with nothing else around it, no prints leading up to it or leading away. And if you remember, Scott, we got to ask Bob Gimlin, sitting 2 feet away from us, what he saw, because I was always curious, like, he's a tracker. He went as far as he could. What did you see? And what he told us, Bob Gimlin said that when he started tracking Patty's prints, he came to one that was only half of a wet footprint left on a boulder. And where she would have had to walk into the brush was so dense, he couldn't make his way through it to keep going. That's what's kind of weird. I mean, animals go through brush all the time.
And I think it was also up a super steep hill, too.
It was starting to, he could tell that it was really hard, dense brush to go through. Now, if you've been out in the woods and you've seen big game go through brush, they certainly do. They'll leave clumps of hair. They'll create a hole. They'll break twigs and sticks and branches as they go through. He didn't see anything. So I wonder, of course, Patty had to get her feet wet crossing that creek there. She leaves half a footprint, and then it's like she vanished.
Yeah. I wanted to read this little excerpt from one of these articles. It's from a clipping from the St. Cloud Times that one of our researchers found in the Astonishing Research Corps. This is about a gentleman named Ed Phillips. He was a pet shop owner who came from Kokomo, Indiana.
That's
I have
right.
a friend from there, believe it or not, to check out the tracks and was there to see the tracks. And he said in this one article entitled Enfield Monster, The Beginning of a Legend. And look at that. It must be, because we're talking about it here, on Astonishing Legends. That's what we do. Anyway, this quote from Phillips, the pet store owner, says, quote, "It couldn't be a hoax," end quote. Phillips said, "The tracks were hidden under dense bush as well as in the open," he said. "Plaster casts were made." Which, this brings a point. I don't know where these casts are. I haven't read anything about those being on file anywhere. Have you?
Who knows? This stuff just gets...
No, I know, but it's like you did more research on this than I did, so you didn't come across it. It's like, oh, yeah, they have the tracks here. Loren Coleman has them. Nobody...
No.
In fact, I'll ask him that right now.
You should...
Yeah.
Folks, he's going to tap out a tweet right now.
I don't know. He's probably not awake. It's 10 till 1 in the morning.
No, don't bother the poor man.
April 21st.
No, DM him and see if he's got anything to say. Like I said, this stuff is ephemeral.
He hasn't responded to my DM, so we just got to do it right out in public.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, I think it's interesting about Phillips saying the tracks were in this dense bush and out in the open. So then you get back to that whole thing about, does that mean it just was really adept at moving? If something this big, it's like, how is it getting under the brush?
I don't.
Is it doing that because it's it's really good at walking off trail, or is it materializing? I guess is what I'm pointing at.
I will say this: if you go along that route, if you take that bend in the road of belief, I've heard many stories. One coming from our distant friend Paul Sinclair up in the Yorkshire area, that he's taken a lot of reports of strange things moving in the trees, but effortlessly. Big, like Flixton werewolf kind of stuff. Things moving where it doesn't seem possible. As I said before, the physics don't match up. It doesn't seem right. A very good friend of ours who has another podcast, this person, I don't want to out them because it was a personal story of theirs. So I asked them, I was like, you ever seen anything weird? And they said, well, one time while riding ATVs with their family, saw something big, like a big black dark shadow, some kind of big bipedal beast of sorts running through the brush, keeping up with them. So there is something about that, about them moving in impossible ways, let's say, that the physics of actual underbrush like that make it impossible. Because I will say this, I was just thinking about this when you and I were driving to Nashville from the Carolinas, and it's beautiful and lush, and you look off into the woods and it's really green there. And again, it's late summer, but it's very full of vegetation, flora. And what people don't realize is that when you see that, you have not tried to walk through that. Let me tell you, folks, guaranteed, you try to walk through that, you will not make it very far.
Yeah.
It is so dense. Most of the time when you're walking through the woods, you're on a trail.
Right.
And I've certainly been through the woods where you can walk between the trees, but some of that where it's real green and there's a lot of brush, you can't get through it. It's hard to get through it with a machete. Keep that in mind again, impossible movements we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with the term small business was clearly not a small business owner. In fact, I'm thinking it was probably some banker somewhere for whom the word small means doesn't make millions of dollars a year, because there ain't nothing about running a small business that feels small to the small business owner.
Are you sure you said the word small enough there?
Smally, 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 smally. How do you like that? Well, I'm just trying to make a point here. Okay, I mean, technically, we are a small business, right? I mean, do you think running our company feels small?
No, you're absolutely right. It's actually the hardest I've ever worked in my life. One might go so far as to say overwhelming. It's probably not good that I so easily identify with those folks on Shark Tank who seem to be at their wit's end right when they walk in, when they're making their pitches to the sharks. They're already exhausted. That's
I know. Well, at least you're not doing a little song and dance that you prepared for everybody. Well, look, my friend, that's because the sharks know that time is money, and there are a lot of things we can do in our small business to save time and therefore save money. For example, the post office. You can waste a lot of time and money with repeated trips to that place. But with Stamps.com, you can skip the trip and focus on how to take your small business to the next level.
Yeah, stamps.com lets you print official postage right from your computer and saves you money in the process, so you can spend less time at the post office and more time making your customers happy.
Yeah, look, we've been at this for quite a while now, and the longer we do it, the more we realize that it's important to work smarter and not harder if you want to grow your business. Stamps.com saves you time, money, and stress. And for more than 20 years, Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses. They give you access to all the post office and UPS shipping services you need right from your computer and get discounts you can't find anywhere else, like up to 40% off USPS rates, and get this, 76% off UPS.
Look, whether you're an office sending invoices, you got a side hustle Etsy shop, or a full-blown warehouse shipping out orders, Stamps.com will make your life easier. All you need is a computer and standard printer. No special supplies or equipment. You're up and running in minutes, printing official postage for any letter, any package, anywhere you want to send.
Folks, stop overpaying for shipping with Stamps.com. Sign up with promo code ASTONISHING for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts.
Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code ASTONISHING.
That's Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code ASTONISHING.
Hi, I'm Nathan Pluto, and when I'm not convincing my teachers to listen to Astonishing Legends, I'm listening to Astonishing Legends. Now back to the show.
So Officer Lindsay leaves the party to go get a camera to take pictures of the prints, and while the other 3 are still there following the tracks, they bend down to examine some, and Officer Nash describes hearing, quote, the most incredible shriek I've ever heard, end quote. The trio thought this thing was hiding in the woods less than 100 yards away, but they didn't stick around to search for it. They sped off in the squad car. The officers came back and searched the area in the hours that followed, trying to find the source of an unknown splashing sound, but found nothing. The activity seemed to quiet down once day came, and the creature seemed to have returned once it got dark. The first sighting later that evening came from a 4-year-old named Christian Barrel, who told his parents, that's Baril, so Baril, maybe it's Baril, I might not be saying it right.
Yeah, right.
Who told his parents he had seen, quote, a big white ghost in the yard, end quote. Of course, they didn't believe him, thinking it was the whimsy of a child.
Remember that segment?
Yeah, right.
I can't remember which one of the Kryptonite guys said that, but yeah, we were discussing Sam, the Sandown Cloud.
Yes,
and so, yeah, but we've talked about that, and also with Terry Lovelace. It's
a disguise.
The whimsy of a child, they make up stories, but guess what? Sometimes there's often a kernel of truth there. They're just not expressing it in the way that us adults would imagine it.
But then about 10 minutes later, this couple, Randy Creeth and Cheryl Ray, reported seeing something fitting that description in a neighboring yard. Around 10:30 p.m., Creeth and Ray were sitting on the back porch of Cheryl Ray's home when they heard something moving in the trees beyond the lawn. They claimed they saw this creature staring at them from an opening in the, well, I guess it's a copse of trees, isn't it?
One of us had to say it, and I think I beat you to it, but yes.
Well, trees, quietly watching them with glowing pink eyes. Jerome Clark, a friend and associate of Loren Coleman, interviewed Cheryl Ray.
Yes.
And she insisted that the eyes were glowing and not reflecting, as there was no nearby light source that could have caused eye shine. Yeah, so coming back to remember what Henry McDaniel said about, what did he describe them as?
As what I said at the top of the show, glowing pink eyes. He said they were big and pink. Now, that's what I'm saying. This is not in the same location.
Yeah, so it's what Henry McDaniel said about the glowing pink eyes that he said were as large as flashlights.
Right. I'm saying that he also shined a flashlight.
Yeah, he did shine a flashlight, but the quote specifically that he said, as large as flashlights in his quote.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking at this time it's those old-timey flashlights where you slide the button on, probably like a 2-inch diameter, 3.
It depends. I have a collection of old flashlights. Some are about 3 or 4 inches in diameter. Just depends on the reflector size.
If you get the D cell, maybe.
That's the kind you got back then. The other one that I liked is it attached to the actual big battery with the springs. Remember those that you used to heat up your Cox airplane engine block with? Yeah. So, back then, 73, he's shining a light on him. The point here is that this is on somebody's porch, Cheryl Ray's home, and she said there's no light that was shining. These eyes were giving off light.
Right.
That's the freaky thing, okay? They're not shining a light at it. The porch light is not yet on.
So anyway, this description sounds like the same creature that was seen the night before by Randy Needham and Judy Johnson, or it was at least similar. It was described as white and dirty, possibly weighing close to 350 pounds and standing around 7 feet tall. It had a large round head, and Cheryl Ray thought its arms might be ape length, although she couldn't be sure because the beast was standing in waist-high grass. Randy Creeth goes down to the tree line for a better look, crazy, while Ray turned on the porch light.
Right.
But the light didn't show any more of the creature than they had already seen. And then, well, it goes on, and you're just going to have to buy Loren Coleman's terrific book to find out more. There's more to it, but it's still.
Well, we're not quite done, but just if you like this kind of stuff, buy the books. It's just, again, I really enjoyed just reading all these accounts, and it made me wonder, what keeps me thinking, the philosophy of it is, I don't want this thing chasing me. I don't want my shirt scratched off, certainly if it's a new nice shirt and I just ironed it. I don't want anything harassing me, jumping at me, leaping. I got to sleep safely at night. I don't need anything peering through the windows, okay? But the idea, though, is like, what if you could travel back in time and be right there at Enfield at that moment on that lawn, 1973, May 25th, April 25th, and see this thing. And you had a camera, and then you wonder, like, why are all these times in the past all special and they don't seem to happen anymore? Well, folks, they do happen. You just don't know about them yet. Right now, as you listen to this, probably 10 things like this are happening throughout the U.S. Maybe 1,000 things like this are happening around the world. We just don't know about them yet. But they happen because you can't deny the logic of, like, 20 years from now, it's like, hey, remember back on April 20th, 2022, when that weird thing came out and scared the people at the Cinnabon? You're going to read it back. It's like, oh, where was I? It's like, well, there were people there. It happened. These things happen all the time. You just think like, well, nothing's happening now because you don't see it. Everything is perspective. Everything is POV. Everything is personal.
For you, it's still the 20th. For me, it's the 21st.
I know. The clock is ticked round. Point being is when we record this, it's like right now, weird stuff's happening out there.
That's right.
Just because you aren't around to see it doesn't mean it's not also happening out there. Guess what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch right now? Who knows? A portal's opening up and someone's leaving a dookie on the other side. I don't know. It's happening. We now know about it later on, because there's a record of it. And people were, let's say, they didn't care so much about the reputation as much because, as Henry says, they know what they saw. People think he's crazy. He knows that. But he spoke up. And that's how we know about it. And you get made fun of, so a lot of people don't like to speak about this stuff. But there's a few brave souls out there who do, and that's why people are listening to this right now.
So there were some strange events leading up to the Enfield encounter. From the chapter A Look Back, this on page 140 of Coleman's book, Bigfoot, The True Story of Apes in America. During the first week of August 1970, a woman named Vicky Otto writes Loren Coleman to tell him she spotted something near Ireland Grove Road, 3 miles southeast of Bloomington, Illinois. She described approaching something on the road she thought at first was a dog reflecting eye shine from her car's headlights. But getting closer, she said, I saw this ape running in the ditch. The thing I saw was the size of a baboon.
Okay. Yeah.
Then August 16th, 1970, around 9:30 p.m., Dan Lindsay and Mike Anderson were driving along Route 136 heading towards Kickapoo Creek Bridge north of Waynesville, Illinois. Mike Anderson described the encounter by saying, my first thought was a tall man or maybe a bear or a gorilla. The thing stood 6 feet 5 inches tall, was all brown, and had stooped shoulders. Walking on 2 legs and illuminated by the car lights, it more or less trotted across to the west side and along the creek's edge, and then it was gone.
Okay, so that's 1970. And then there's a flap that happens 1 year before Enfield in 72.
Right, and that's with Momo, who our good friends at Small Town Monsters have worked on. And during the summer of 1972 in Louisiana, Missouri, just across the border with Illinois, there were reports of Momo being spotted. We talked about Momo in our interview with musician, author, and cryptid hunter Lyle Blackburn in episode 146 of Astonishing Legends, titled Lyle Blackburn, Cryptid Hunter. That came out on June 15th of 2019.
That was a fun discussion. And he is pretty kick. I gotta say.
Yeah,
in all
so you can go
respects.
back and find that episode if you want to drill down on that even more. Momo, for those of you who don't recall, was a reported very tall, very smelly, Bigfoot-like creature that had long hair
Yeah.
covering its entire body, including its eyes and face, terrorized two women out for a picnic in their Volkswagen Beetle, and ate one of their egg salad sandwiches in one or two
Which is my
gulps.
favorite part of that. I mean, I don't want to lose
Yes.
I mean, I love egg salad. I don't want to lose a sandwich, but just to see like just gone. I mean, it's frightening. Not to diminish how scared they were. Yeah.
Yes. And another sighting of a Momo-like creature was reported in the summer of 72 on two separate occasions in the 2 months prior by 18-year-old Randy Emert on July 26th. Emert told the Peoria Journal-Star that the, quote, monster, end quote, was similar to Momo and that it was kind of white and moved quick. Emert said it stood between 8 and 12 feet
Whoa.
tall, and according to him, the monster also stank pretty bad and seemed to scare the woodland animals near Coal Hollow Road. Emert also said the beast made a noise that sounded like a long screech, like an old steam engine whistle, only more human. He wasn't the only one to see the monster, though. His friends had also seen it or saw the footprints, but he was the one to speak up, saying, I'm kind of a spokesman for the group, the only one who has guts, I guess. Other friends of Emert's, all of the children of Ann Kammer or Peoria, confirmed they had seen it too, stating it sounds kind of weird. At first I didn't believe it, but then my daughter-in-law saw it.
That's maybe people getting the idea that something's lurking around, but they then see something unusual themselves.
Yeah, right. And Randy Emert thought that the beast may be living in a hole dug under the basement of an old abandoned house in the woods that had footprints all around it. Another interesting possible connection is that one of the main witnesses of the Momo encounter, Edgar Harrison, thought Momo also might be squatting in an abandoned building. Just south of Peoria, in Pekin, Illinois, another monster sighting occurred, this time in the Illinois River, which runs through Peoria alongside Pekin. On July 25, 1972, a local resident reported seeing something big swimming in the river. 2 nights later, on July 27th, 2 locals reported to police seeing something that was 10 feet tall and, quote, looked like a cross between an ape and a caveman. In the UPI article that followed, it was described as having a face with long gray U-shaped ears, a red mouth with sharp teeth, and thumbs with long second joints. One of the witnesses said it smelled like a musky, wet-down dog. More than 200 phone calls about the creature had been made to the East Peoria Police Department. On the same evening, that same night, July 25th, 72, 280 miles to the south, Cairo, Illinois resident Leroy Summers reported seeing another type of creature. Something about 10 feet tall, white, and hairy was standing upright near the Ohio River levee. The Cairo PD investigated and found nothing when they got there. And then Police Commissioner James Dale warned that anyone making another monster report would have his breath tested for alcohol. So there you go.
Well, that's a spate of stuff that happened before Enfield. And
Right.
we told you some cases that happened after Enfield.
Yeah.
So again, that paper, what we just read as far as the sociological aspect is just studying how people react to these kind of things. But of course, they're not equipped to tell you what these things are or why people are seeing this kind of weird stuff. It just happens. And some of them now remind me of the Yeti at Universal Studios that screams out at you with the red eyes.
Yes.
Or the Bumble's bounce.
I'm sorry, I'm at a loss on that one.
No, don't go. That's the. Come on, man. Rudolph the
You
Red-Nosed
might be-
Reindeer.
yeah, I'm sorry. You may as well be speaking Mandarin to me right now. I have no idea.
You've
what
never
you're
seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed
talking-
Reindeer.
Oh God, yeah. I don't know that character's
Okay,
name.
right.
Yeah,
The Bumble, the giant Yeti type thing.
Oh yeah, sure.
And he had white fur, but again, that's how people picture Yetis, white fur, but not muddy and not down on the lowlands here,
Yes.
down by the levee. So as we wrap this up, finally, thankfully, mercifully, what is going on, Scott?
Well, I'm not sure I know. I mean, I guess we know more about how people might be reacting to it, how it might be incorrectly investigated by folks looking
Yeah.
at it.
Well, this episode had 2 aspects to it. It's one, the sightings, which are fun to relay, but also a method of analyzing these and thinking about it as far as how people react, as we've been saying, and how they're going to react in the future.
Yeah.
When these things happen.
Yeah.
It's predictable. People are predictable to a certain
Well,
extent.
yeah, and we've seen those as long as we've been doing the show. We see all these patterns in every legend we cover. Any kind of
Right.
sighting, it's the same, whether it's the Jersey Devil or Momo or this case. There's patterns that you recognize and there's behavior that you recognize, and it always plays out the same way.
Yeah. I mean, from the believing stance to the skeptical to the debunker.
Right.
And those aren't the same things. We're not saying that. It's people like, well, I don't know what this is. And guess what? I don't have time for this. Like,
Another pattern for me that I see and I've learned about from our show is that I think it's just the one incident, and then the person makes up the second or the third one or wants to say other people saw it so as to not sound crazy. And so then you come back down to, for me, if as a personal investigator, if I was in the field, I would probably only be concerned with the initial sighting of a person who was unaware of any other sightings at any given moment. So in this case, I would want to investigate Henry McDaniel's first sighting and get all the information I could on that. And then I would just say, you know what, I'm going to assume the second one is him trying to validate what happened to him the first time. Or
possibly.
I'm going to say, no, but I'm just saying, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is the approach I would take. And I'm going to say that if he says someone else saw it, that doesn't mean anything to me. And then if there are other eyewitnesses, then what you're going to have to show me as another eyewitness is that when you saw it, you weren't aware of his story at all. You either saw it before he did, or you saw it after he did, but you were completely in the dark about the experience that he had. When those two things come together, when it's his first story and then another one similar to it, maybe from another town, from another person who had no idea what happened to Henry, then that's the data that I want to work off of, because that it takes away the I'm trying to validate this and trying to validate that. I want people to believe me, or I like the attention I got the first time I reported this, even if it was real. All of those things get removed when you look at that first instance. So that would be where my investigations would try to start, would be, what was this first incident? And are there other incidents that are similar from people who didn't know about the incident from our witness zero? And then when you circle back on that and you say, okay, let's say, I'm going to make an assumption. He made up the additional sightings. He wasn't able to point to other people who said they also saw it. You know, we don't know about the little boy. Maybe he did encounter something, maybe he didn't. But let's say it's all about that first one. And then when you come back down to one thing and he hears something scratching at the door and he comes out with a pistol and he sees something in the bushes in the dark. It's an incredibly windy night. He fires off 4 shots. Something takes off, something strong. I think, yes, he saw an animal. But I also think if you take that down to this one instance in the dark, 9:45, 10 p.m., weird noises, you're a little freaked out. You're freaked out enough that you're coming to the door with a gun and a flashlight.
Right.
It's possible to make a mistake there of some kind.
Sure.
And then you come back to the whole thing about the bear with mange, the whatever. Maybe it's, something strange. Maybe it is
the nude sloth.
Yeah, I don't know. Some kind, sloths can't leap. Like, I believe him about it. Got to the train tracks really fast. Now, let's say he's exaggerating that. It's 75 feet away. Maybe it didn't make 3 leaps. Maybe it just ran fast. It looked a little humanoid. Well, that could be any fur-bearing varmint without its fur, if it has a problem, can look kind of humanoid because, it's got skin. So it's like there's all kinds of mistakes that could be made.
Sure.
If you can't point to other people who saw the same thing and their first-time instances, that would be my thing. So when I look at this situation...
Well, also keeping in mind that this was different seems to me, than what other people like Rick Rainbow were seeing later.
Yeah.
A larger, furrier thing that was taller, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. I mean, that's what I love about all these sightings. Yeah.
It's the other thing that happens is when a bunch of people go out in the woods at night that are never in the woods at night, and the woods are usually by themselves at night, and whatever's in those woods is by itself at night, and suddenly they're in proximity to each other, you might see something strange, and I can tell for a while, my wife and I had a house out in the country in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which I've mentioned on the show before, near the Delaware River. And that river valley is spooky. It's a spooky valley. There's Sasquatch sightings, everything. And, we'd be out there at night on our porch, just hanging out and talking late into the wee hours, having wine or whatever, midnight, 1 a.m. And I heard critters that I could not tell you what they were. Now, I'm not a hunter and I'm not a tracker. And maybe some of my neighbors who are lifelong hunters, a dear friend, Don, who I talked about in the Archipalooza series, Maybe he could have said, oh, yeah, that's a great horned owl. That's this, that, and the other. But I distinctly remember hearing a few things that I was just like, I cannot possibly imagine what that animal is. I have no idea what that is. So it occurs to me that some folks might encounter things that they don't really know what they are, and then they speculate on it. And so I can see how these things might be misinterpreted. On the other hand, I also, as I think have made clear on the show in the past, I believe you can encounter things that are strange, especially if you're on Skinwalker Ranch or you're on some of the other places that have its similar reputation, and they're out there. There's other ones that aren't as famous as the ranch, but they have all the kind of same stuff going on, the kitchen sink stuff. I do believe that stuff happens in this particular story, and I don't think it's fair for the journalists and for everybody, to say, "Oh, he's just an old hick with a gun" or whatever. I don't like that assessment, because I know a lot of old hicks, and after you talk to them for a while, you realize that they might have a thick accent, but they're just as smart as the rest of us, and they're not all inbred and have no worldly experience. I mean, I don't come into it with those judgments, so I don't like that assessment. But I do see where, different personality types and how they react to this experience and how it unfolds, different things happen, and you have to take all that into account. So for me, in this particular case with this story, there's not enough information for me to draw any kind of conclusion. And that's my final assessment.
I totally get that.
All right, so what do you think, man?
Some monster out there knows something. Maybe that monster is you.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense at all. That's going to wrap up our show on the Enfield Monster. Remember, we're dark for 2 weeks due to natural breaks in our annual calendar, but we'll be back on May 14th with a brand new show. Meanwhile, visit patreon.com/astonishinglegends to access our exclusive Junk Drawer show that runs every week. The main show is dark. Yes, including the extra dark week coming up. Between the Junk Drawer and the main show, you can hear Astonishing Legends year-round. The Junk Drawer is a whole different animal. Salty, uncensored, disorganized, reckless, and wildly inappropriate.
Ew, I feel like your marketing terms might not be selling it the right way.
Or is it perfect?
Please remember to support our sponsors. They help keep the show free and the lights on in Blanket Fortiana.
Hi, I'm Aleko Bellavilla.
Hi, I'm Matt Bird.
Hi, I'm Nathan Bluto.
I'm listening
I'm listening
to
Astonishing Legends. SARAH.
Astonishing Legends is edited by Sarah Voorhees-Wendell and co-produced by Tess Feifel, who is also head of research and the social media manager. Special thanks to our announcer, John Bolin.
Our theme, which is available as a ringtone, was composed by Judson Crane at foundermusic.com, and our sound design and additional composing is by Ryan McCullough.
Our logo was designed by Tommy Beaver Design, and our animated graphics for social media and YouTube are done by Joshua Sloan at deadstreetproductions.com.
Every episode going back to September of 2020 has a transcription available on its corresponding webpage at our website. Earlier transcriptions can be made available upon request if you email astonishingcontact@gmail.com.
Astonishing Legends would not be possible without you, our listeners. Visit our store at astonishinglegends.com or interact with us and other listeners on Instagram, Twitter, Discord, Facebook, and YouTube.
You can also visit us at patreon.com/astonishinglegends, where patrons have access to additional bonus content, including the Patreon exclusive show Astonishing Junk Drawer, which is available every week. The main show is not. No part of this show may be reproduced anywhere without permission. Copyright Astonishing Legends Productions.
Good night.